All right. Hey, everybody. This is Joe Mohay, president of franchise and multi-location here at Ignite Visibility. Oh, I'm just very, very excited to get together with everyone after just probably one of the most impactful IFAs I've ever been to. I've been doing IFAs for about 13 years, so that just tells you how amazing this one was. Just the topics, the conversations, obviously everything and all to do with how AI is evolving our businesses, both when it comes to digital marketing, our visibility or lack thereof, and obviously how to use it operationally within your business. So want to just, of course, introduce my esteemed team here at Ignite Visibility. We've got Karen Devlin, our VP of AI SEO, Stephanie Peterson, our Chief Marketing Officer, and Chuck Goetschel, our Chief Product Officer and founder of Rallio. So great to have you guys, and I'm excited to get you guys into our presentation. All right, let's move on here. And we're going to go ahead and go over some of the agenda this afternoon. So first and foremost, we're going to cover what the new reality of search is in 2026. Then we'll go into some of the tactical things that this esteemed team will cover, starting with how to win the AI answer with AI SEO, which will be covered by Karen. Social as the new storefront and AI data source, which Chuck will get into. And then, of course, Stephanie will get into the visibility to profitability and the revenue feedback loop. So really starting out, this is one of the best, I think, really, giving you guys all a view of what search journey is today, right? And what it's going to continue to evolve to. So as you can see here on this first slide, the core here is that this is a zero click reality, right? We are in business today to obviously generate leads, but in the new dynamic, people make buying decisions without even clicking. So it's very, very important that um, you understand this movement, the shift in the buyer's behavior, because you see the stats here. AI answers dominate 75% of mobile screen space. So there's a lot of real estate that's being dedicated to AI overviews, and 80% of those customers rely on AI summaries without even clicking. So the core here is to make sure that you are visible where your customers are looking, and that's going to be the real big topic of the conversation today. I think it's also real important, as we all know, in franchise businesses, there's really two core search journeys. There's two core areas that franchisors and operators need to be thinking about as they scale and grow their business. So we're going to cover both. I think that's important that we do. So the dual threat, the dual discovery that businesses need to be thinking about is, of course, franchise development, how franchise candidates are deciding which brands they're going to engage with. Again, knowing that a lot of their decision making is done before the click. And of course, that franchise consumer buyer that is looking for your local franchisees. And of course, those franchisees want to be found and chosen by those local customers. So as you many have probably done your own searches and looking at how you appear on Google, many of you, I'm sure, on this call or this webinar have strong prominence in both areas of those search behaviors on a Google search. I would hope so with your digital marketing efforts. But it's really enlightening to see how many people or websites don't actually appear when they're looking at those other platforms like a Chat GPT or Google AI. And so this is a great illustration of how you need to be thinking about your website and making sure it's more present than ever beyond just Google.
I think that's a great point, Joe. One thing I heard over and over again at the roundtables is that when we think about AI search, our probably most common scenario that comes to mind is going to be like a consumer Fran experience. But it's definitely relevant for Fran Dev as well, especially because those searches require so much in-depth research and so much back and forth. So definitely an opportunity in both areas.
And I also would think, again, the reputation of brands is more evident than ever because of those signals and those reviews, and that affects franchise development just as much as it affects local buyers and local customers. So thanks for pointing that out, Karen. But obviously, SEO this is the other question I know also that we're at the IFA. I probably got this 50 times, either at the booth, at the roundtables, at the different events. Is traditional SEO dead? And Karen, I got to ask you, do you think traditional SEO is dead?
Absolutely not. I won't lie. There was definitely a day or two where I was a little bit nervous, but the reality is, solid SEO tactics are as important, if not more important than ever.
Yeah, and the tactics really are fundamental. They're foundational. I think we could agree. And we're going to get into some of the advanced tactics. I'm excited for you to share with the audience today, Karen. But as you can see here, these are fundamentals, right? The technical on-site, the on-page signals, content quality, the off-page signals, which actually has more impact, I believe, more than ever when we think about AI, searches and those ecosystems, and of course, making sure you're engaging and driving as much conversation to your business through those improvements on your website. So I'm glad to say that traditional SEO isn't dead. It's just really expanding it is the key here, and we're going to get into a lot of those specifics on the next several slides here. Okay, now this one, I tell you, I saw this I don't know, a couple months ago, Karen. I remember you shared this with us. 19% of searches are as actually what's overlapping. So 81% of people or people looking to search engines don't actually see the same result across both ChatGPT and Google. That's alarming to me.
I think that's a great point. I mean, when I look at this slide, what this tells me is that if you are either a franchise company or fran dev, whatever your focus is, it's really, really important to understand your position not only in Google traditional SEO, but also within ChatGPT. Excuse me. And Chuck, I think you might have some thoughts on that too.
What's been interesting to me is how many people, and it's not anyone's fault, but are not even aware that there are stats that you can find out about if you're not using a certain platform, you're not seeing those. But just as we've traditionally talked about, hey, how are your keywords ranking and all that in traditional SEO, you can do the same thing with these LLMs, with ChatGPT and all the other ones. Like, how am I showing up? How am I ranking? How am I doing compared to my competitors? And that data is available and really interesting.
So you can get like SEO rankings now for LLMs. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly right, and that's the kind of information we love pulling in and talking about because it's mind blowing because people have no idea. So I definitely want to see that.
There's a great segue into how really buyer behavior is, both from a traditional sense of a traditional search sense as well as AI. And I love this dynamic here. This really kind of compares. I hate to say it, the old school way and the new school way, but it really is. I mean, traditional SEO, really nothing's changed there. It's someone looking at a search, trying to solve their search, looking at websites and the prominence of those websites, clicking the site and taking the desired action. But with AI, as you see here towards the right, it's that whole ecosystem is now talking to each other, and those signals are driving that AI engine to produce the most trustworthy business website, whether it's a consumer brand search or a local franchisee, or of course that franchise development executive looking to attract great candidates. It's pulling that ecosystem, synthesizing it, and giving that result. And so it really is a different buyer and the way they search. And I love this slide to kind of illustrate those two.
And Joe, I think one interesting component here is we have these set up in very parallel tracks, right? Where you've got a fully traditional SEO track and a fully AI SEO track. And that's not how it happens in reality, right? These are very blended searches and user behaviors. And so you can't necessarily even think about these strategies on their own anymore. The magic and where you get the most benefit from it is when you're bringing these together and looking at it as a holistic search ecosystem. So people think, as long as I am, thinking about ChatGPT and Perplexity and really that first level of this funnel here, that's equivalent to Google. But where the trick comes in is really in the second level of this funnel. Because if you look at it, Google was very focused on your brand and your website, right? As a source that it was pulling from. With all of the GPTs, they're not just looking at your site. They're looking at listings reviews out there. They're looking at social sites. They're looking at news and branded sites out there. YouTube is playing a huge role in this because they're picking up a ton of the video content. And so when you think about the combination of those two levels of the funnel together, the number of touch points is just exploding from a consumer journey standpoint. So instead of me going and looking at maybe like 3 pieces of content to make my decision about a particular business that I want to work with, the average is now up to 12. So there's 12 different touch points, whether that's reviews, your social posts, all of those different components coming together into this one ecosystem so that you are visible across all of those different sites. So, I think this is a great way to visualize from a simple standpoint, but again, we have to think about this as that integrated ecosystem.
Great summary, Stephanie. I definitely agree with you. And so we want to now get into a little bit more of the tactical, right? We want our audience to know, okay, I see the fundamentals. I see how buyers are searching in different ways. How do I arm myself, my brand, my team with the right approach? And doing that through partners or through some of our own efforts inside of the franchise organization. Really, this is a great education piece. So I'm going to hand it to Karen to let her really educate the audience here on this topic.
Let's get into the nitty gritty. So when we think about how can you win in 2026, right? We've talked about the 12 touch points. We've talked about, Reddit, YouTube. It may seem overwhelming, but rest assured, we've got some really straightforward tips that we're going to share over the next few slides that will hopefully make this seem not only achievable, but hopefully even somewhat easy. So when we look at different ways that you can win in 2026, it really comes down to a combination of AI SEO. So are you visible? Social search optimization, are you trusted? And then do you own the revenue, right? So are you chosen? And we'll show you on the next slide 5 different pillars that if you follow, you'll have a solid foundation towards winning in AI SEO. At Ignite Visibility, we really take a strategic approach when it comes to helping you build a strong foundation to make sure that all of your content, whether it's on your own site or whether it's a multimedia site like YouTube, follows these 5 pillars. If you follow these 5 pillars, you can be confident that LLMs are able to understand and ingest your content in a way that will help you be visible when someone searches for your brand. The very first one, and arguably the most important, is this idea of retrievability. This is essentially kind of like indexing in the old days of SEO. Are you able to be found? The second one, content alignment. This is really, does your messaging align? Authority signals. This gets into whether you're trusted. And then finally, competitive differentiation and entity mapping. So what is your brand differentiator? And we'll go into each of these approaches on the next few slides. The first one we mentioned, and again, arguably the most important, is content retrievability. So if AI can't understand what your page is about, if it can't read the text or the language on your page, it pretty much may as well not exist. So in terms of how you can make sure that your page is ingestible, it's really important for LLMs to break content into specific blocks. And each block should be related. So if you have 3 different paragraphs, make sure that paragraph A is about one topic, B about another, and C is about the final one. Bonus points if you can put a quick summary statement at the top of the page, like a TLDR, because this is going to be essentially a quick way for AI to understand this is what the page is about. Of course, for many years, we've also used H2s and H3s along with schema to help make sure that from a code level, the important parts of our pages are easy for LLMs to find, same as back in the old days with the Google bot. And then finally, the differentiator here is that it really becomes more important than ever to publish blogs and FAQs. So this specific long tail content that answers client questions is super important. The idea here is that if I type a question into, let's say, ChatGPT, If your page answers it almost exactly as the way that I typed it, it's more likely that you'll be cited. So make sure that your content follows a Q&A style format. Content alignment, right? So this is where we can really help you determine a content strategy that's aligned with how your clients are searching and what information is really important to them. So once you've got those big chunks of your content strategy defined, like what topics do you really want to win on? Again, here, put direct answers at the top of the page. Make it easy. Write in a conversational tone. It's really important here to make sure that the content that we publish is high quality and specific. Don't publish a 3,000 word article if 2,000 of those words are filler. Every word counts. It's really important to have strong content. This is actually my favorite of the 5 pillars. This is competitive differentiation. So I talk about this all the time, and this is this idea of promoting this niche content specific to your brand, right? So if there's one thing that your brand can stand out for, maybe it's your customer service, maybe it's your price match guarantee. But we all know, right? We all have that one thing that we do better than anyone else. We need to stop thinking about, a glossy brochure with some bullet points. And we need to make sure that we are explaining our value proposition really, really clearly in a way that LLMs can understand. So all those best practices that we talked about, like FAQs, conversations, chunked paragraphs, apply that to your brand differentiation, and you'll have a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, I would just add, I think this is actually also my favorite slide because I believe in the methodology that you need to really anticipate what your customer, what your buyer is going to ask. What are the big pain points? What are the big questions? This is where you huddle your team, right? If you're in the franchise or franchisee relationship, what are your local customers asking more questions about? And try to arm them with those answers. And then on the franchise development side, I've always been very big on making sure your franchise sales folks are talking to your marketing folks and really giving them the educational insights of what those conversations are in the sales process. I think that could be a real distinction for a lot of brands going into this new year.
Yeah, great point. All right. And this one maybe is my second favorite. This is authority signals. So this potentially is more important than ever, right? As we do see that our brand is cited such a huge percentage in these third party sources. Like here we have some trade publications, super important, YouTube, Reddit, everyone's favorite, all of these different third parties. It's really important to make sure that your brand reputation is solid, right? So different things that you can do here. Create that partnership by citing publications that are reputable. Make sure that those citations are right after claims. And then also, if you are building backlinks, make sure that you're going with trusted partners, right? We're no longer seeing the days of the shotgun approach to link building. We have to be much more thoughtful about it. And that's one thing that I think is going to be really important going forward.
All right, well let's get this next topic underway, and this is Chuck. I know you obviously understand all aspects of social, and now with that layer of how AI is deciding where people should show up and using social signals, it's more important than ever that brands are doing it the right way. So I'll give it to you, Chuck.
Yeah, absolutely. So social, for those who remember back when I'm dating myself here, but when really social really got going, and particularly reviews were coming out, and the whole idea was social proof, right? No longer were we just listening to the brand themselves, but a trusted agent, somebody who went there, left a review, and said something about it. We trusted that person. Well, today, social has become the new thing because LLMs are now looking at that like we did back in the day. They're looking at that trusted content. They're saying, hey, we really want to know if we should promote this brand based on what the web is saying, what everybody is talking about. And that's why all these things that used to be a bit more brand focused are now really all about influencing these LLMs and saying, yes, I can be trusted. Yes, talk to me about it. And so when you look at these stats here, yeah, 64% of consumers purchase based on social influence, but that influence must be local. So the LLMs are looking not just at the brand, like people talk about the brand in general, but even at your location. And quite frankly, many times the LLMs they're aware of where you are based on browser settings and stuff. And so even if you don't search a local search, it often will give you a local answer. And so it's looking at that local input, looking at those local signals and saying, is this a trusted source locally so I can serve it up? It's an amazing transformation that's happened in the social space.
Yeah, Chuck, that even happened to me at IFA this week. I did a quick chat GPT search. We had to pick up a last minute item for the booth. So I see that all the time.
At first, it's a little creepy. It's like, how's it know? But then you realize that it is helpful because I needed something local. So, yeah, as we say in the AI era now, an inactive social page is a broken link to your revenue chain because you're literally telling an LLM, don't worry about this location, right? We don't need you to promote that location. It's not important. And so, like your example, Karen, it wouldn't have come up, right? So if that information wasn't provided locally, then that wouldn't have been a local recommendation. So more than ever before, these local pages have got to be lit up. So in the last couple of years, we've seen a movement of social being more meaningful, like search engines indexing different social posts and stuff. And that was starting to become more of a thing. But AI has taken that to a whole another level, where now content is being read. And so AI reads captions on posts. It reads on-screen text. It watches videos and transcribes them, and also finds transcriptions of videos, hashtags, metadata. It's reading more than you've ever seen before. And so those things matter now. And so no longer can you just push out corporate content because the corporate content doesn't have the local information that matters. And so when you have that local information from local posts talking about local things, it's really going to pick that up. And so as we joke, the generic captions of cute puppy and the stock photos, it really isn't going to make an impact on these LLMs.
I have a quick question, Chuck. If I'm a franchisee, is it better to post no post or to post a stock photo? If I don't have an option for a local photo, which do you think is better?
Well, you don't want to look like you're out of business, right? So if you don't post anything, you're just basically giving up. So posting something is better than nothing, but posting something relevant is far superior than posting just a generic post. So yeah, don't just do nothing because you don't have the perfect local image or something. Show that you're in business, and then figure out a game plan to improve on. Reviews. I was talking about them earlier, but here's what gets really interesting. So again, and I don't know if you remember how important reviews really got during, say, the pandemic, because people were like checking a review and saying, are they open? Are they safe? And I don't want to look at a review that was a year old. I want to look at something that was really recent to know if I should go to this place right now. Well, AI engines have picked up on that same philosophy. They care about really relevant reviews. And so, although quantity reviews is really important and keywords in reviews are really important, also the timeline of those reviews have been important. And one of the most important stats I want you to take away from this is that businesses with reviews in the last 30 days are over 2 times more likely to be cited in AI answers, over double. And that's because it can be trusted. This is current, relevant information. And again, the LLMs want to be current and relevant. And so it's kind of like back in those pandemic days where we want to know, is this really relevant right now? Is it trusted right now? That's what the LLMs are thinking. And so you got to make sure that you have a system in place to be constantly cranking out these new reviews. So the LLMs are saying, yep, this is relevant right now. This is worthy of sharing. And if you have reviews and they're not being answered, that's a whole nother thing, right? We call that it's a data gap signaling dormancy to the AI. It's like, yeah, these reviews are coming in, but we don't care. We're not in business. I'm not sure what it is, but we're not responding. And that's a huge signal. And so you want to make sure that those are being responded to promptly. And ideally with keywords shouting out what they're about. So continuing on the theme of local, one of the things that I think is inherently kind of common sense, but surely is so important, is that people trust authentic local content, right? And the stat here, 63% more than brand channels. So the brand content is super important for credibility. But if I'm going to be driven into a local business, I want to have trust that something about that local business is engaging me. I see a photo, I see something posted, something relevant to me in my neighborhood that's relating to me, that's going to drive me in. And so, one of the important things that you can do is really look at engaging employee advocacy, because you need boots on the ground, right? You need somebody who's there to actually take the photos with the employees and to be able to promote, hey, this is a great place to work, with customers to say this is a great place to come by. Whatever it might be, to get that local environment. Maybe it's events that you're holding or something that's relevant to that location. And so having employee advocacy programs that can enable that, really activate those capture those special moments, that's gold online. And of course, just like we want to respond to reviews, got to be managing those DMs and comments to convert that type of engagement into bookings. So many missed opportunities I hear all the time about comments that are like, "Hey, how much is this?" And then just no answer.
I would just add, Chuck, I want to say this. I mean, now more than ever, the brand marketers at our franchisor organizations have to engage with your franchisees more than ever. And they need to make sure they're armed with the best tools, right? The best tools, and be able to have a bird's eye view on everything, and guide and educate them at the same time. So, great observation there, Chuck.
Absolutely. And we all understand, the challenge for franchisees and for operators, right? They have so many things on their plate. And in the past, oftentimes social would get dropped kind of to the bottom, right? Hey, let's take care of operations and all that, and put that on the bottom because it was more of a branding exercise or something, or we'll just let corporate handle it all. But today, because of the change in dynamics online and the importance of local really showing up online, we've got to have a way in which they can be involved, and it's got to be super simple and super easy, so they'll actually do it. And so we have a whole system here that's brought all the different aspects that Karen and Stephanie and Joe, we've all been talking about, into one place. And so you can do all these different things, work together, corporate and franchisee, and it's super simple.
I mean, just going back to what we were talking about with getting that user generated content, I think that's always been a little bit thought of as a double-edged sword, right? Because yes, we want everybody in the company out there promoting the brand and promoting those local components, but it also feels like a little bit of a loss of control, right? Over your brand guidelines, the types of images that you want to be out there, your brand voice. And that's what I think is the most exciting piece of Rallio, because with this platform, you get the best of both worlds. You can come in, you set up that brand. It's an AI powered brand playbook that has all of the do's and don'ts, has all of the very specific components that you either do or don't want to show. And I always love your example, Chuck, of even, being able to get down to do not post images that don't have a hard hat in them. Um, you get all of this control at scale. So there's no way to go in and manage that with 150, 200 locations out there. And you're asking your team to get this great local content that's going to convert. But how are you supposed to sift through all of that and make sure it all aligns with the brand? And that's like the core of this platform and what this enables. So you get those high level brand controls, but then also the lead gen component of that lower funnel user generated content, right out in the marketplace. So I just wanted to call that piece out because I think it's really powerful.
Because after a decade of having the same discussions, it's like, if we at corporate handle everything, we control brand, but we lose engagement locally. If the local operators do everything, man, we can have engagement like crazy, but maybe it's the wrong engagement because they're way off brand standards and everything. So how do we do all this? And to your point, the comment you made about the hard hats, the one brand that we were working with, they finally engaged all the local operators to start posting stuff, and they were posting pictures of them working without hard hats, and OSHA was running around assigning fees to everybody. So they're like, oh, great, we finally got them engaged, and now they're getting fees. So what you're talking about is we have an AI playbook that actually does the heavy lifting for you, so that all imagery, all text, everything goes into the system and is overseen by the AI compliance and making sure that everything is spot on within compliance. There's no worries. It's not a problem for corporate. Corporate doesn't have to get in there and get involved and check everything because it's doing it for them. And so this has been a huge game changer, allowing the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. The only other one that I would just want to highlight here is Rev. So the customer surveys and review generator, Karen touched on this. Reviews are content for AIs when they're out there looking for this. It is actual content, whether it's in video form, text form, whatever form they're coming in. Reviews could not be more important to the entire ecosystem today. And Rev is great because you can connect it right up to your CRM. Again, you can set it and forget it to the extent that you're not having to manage every time one of a job is completed, you're manually sending out a reminder to get the review. All of it can be automated through your CRM so that, it's shown that the sooner that you ask someone for a review after the service is completed, the higher the response rate, right? And this allows you to get those responses immediately and then promote the opportunity to go out and leave a public review when there's been great service associated with it. So just another really cool feature that helps from a scale standpoint.
So, a little side note and a subtlety that a lot of people don't talk about with Rev is that because of the automation and, as you said, the speed of getting that survey out into the hands of the customer, it actually decreases negative reviews consistently. So, if somebody is not happy and they get the survey, they tend to vent in the survey, and then once they're done venting, we find they just don't seem to have the need to vent again publicly. And so it actually decreases the negative reviews while increasing the positive reviews. So it's a double win. So one of the features we've been talking about capturing all these local images, and that's always been a rub. It's been hard, right? The franchisee doesn't have the time, but we've come up with a tool that is so fun, and that is it's a mobile app that can be distributed to all the employees, and the only thing that it can do is capture these local images because it's the employees that are actually with the customer. The employees are at the event. The employees are at all the special moments, and they can capture that moment in the app, click on it, and even in that app, they can have if it's a customer, have the customer sign a model release form digitally right there with their finger on the phone, and that is a release that allows you to use that image. That release and the image both go into the platform that can be then used by somebody else to actually create the content. So it's really, really powerful. It's actually really fun. We call it like crowdsourcing imagery. And so you activate all your employees to crowdsource the imagery. They capture all those special moments. Those come in, and then whomever it is can craft the content out.
That's so cool, Chuck. My brain goes to the before and afters that you can really collect, right? There's so many visual services out there that getting that really on site, like, oh, here's what it was before, and here's the great job we did. Just such a great factor to show consumers.
For sure. Cleaning companies, home services. Look at my new windows. Look at my new doors. That's a great idea.
This is what it's all about, right? Revenue. And so when all these things come together, and now it can lead to generating that revenue and the revenue feedback loop, as we call it. Let's talk about this a little bit to wrap up.
Sounds good. Thanks for all the great top of funnel insights. And I think we've got some great stats in here. But as Chuck mentioned, if we can't actually connect that and drive those leads, drive that visibility down funnel, it's all for nothing. We need to generate revenue. The business runs on revenue, not on leads. Is kind of our motto around here. And that attribution gap has been a challenge for service businesses for years. The e-com space, it's a lot easier to handle, right? Because you've got all of that data coming in from a point of sale system. But from the service business standpoint, and certainly from a multi-location standpoint, where you've got multiple CRMs, multiple places to track this, understanding which of your leads that are coming in from which channels, even down to the level of a keyword that generated that particular lead, how do you know whether or not that translated into revenue, and how much revenue, and what were the characteristics of that, so that you can go out and replicate it again? And that's really what our product RevConnect does for businesses. So we've talked about the sheer number of increased touch points, channels that consumers are using. The journey is not a linear process anymore. I don't do a Google search, go to your website, make that call every time. Sometimes, absolutely, it's still a path there. But generally, I am out there checking a review. I go to another site to check out your social performance. I want all of these data points in my mind as a consumer to understand whether or not I'm going to get great service from this business. And so with that, we're tracking all of these points all the way through the funnel, pushing data back and forth between your actual CRM that you've already got implemented as a part of your business, and being able to optimize campaigns real time and feed that data back into the engine, so that your actual, Google campaign that you're running, or your Microsoft campaign, or your Facebook campaign that you're running, is receiving indicators back on a multiple times a day into those engines, so that it can optimize those campaigns for appointments, conversions, actual revenue coming back from your CRM. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this closed loop, is all the way from the very top of the funnel, from that keyword that drove the initial click, down to what revenue was generated off of that lead. And the reporting component of it is great, because it gives you that overall view as a business. And within our platform, you can actually see at the very highest level, how is my cost of marketing reacting over time? And this is an example of real data, where we saw a consistent drop in that cost of marketing over time, because we were feeding better and better information back into the optimization engine. We were making better decisions as an agency, optimizing those campaigns and looking at creative for those campaigns, so that we could continue to drive that cost of marketing down. There's just too many data points in the whole funnel today to do this on a manual basis. And so what RevConnect does is really helps distill that down, provide some key reporting and some key visuals, so that you can see, how is my revenue reacting over time? How is my cost of marketing? Where in my funnel are things getting stuck, right? I see a huge drop off at this step in the funnel. How do I go out and optimize that? So it even gives you insights beyond just the marketing channels, but also into that funnel process as you're moving down. Additionally, within this platform, so you don't just get the high level view at the aggregate level to see how your business is performing, but you can break it down in multiple ways. So within the same dashboard, only having to log in once for all of the locations that you have underneath your purview. So whether that's 100, 3, 4, however it works, you can come in here and see those individual metrics and which leads going into each of those locations is generating revenue, and see those same metrics all the way through the funnel. With the roll-up reporting, it allows you to also set custom filters. So if you always want to look at an entire state together, an entire set of markets within one area or under one owner together, you can set up all of those filters. And so it's really meant to be that flexible tool, not only that you can see, but also that agency teams can come in and make sure that they're identifying where are the best performing markets, where are the best performing verticals, what are the best performing channels, and really work to optimize against those. It can add some operational efficiency as well, because we all know trying to aggregate reports across 15 different tracking tools, and now even at the beginning of this we talked about there's more tracking tools out there now specific to AI. And so what this does is gives you that single place to bring everything together. You can even take it down to the very lowest level, to which actual leads generated that revenue. So being able to see that in a single place of what channel that came from, but also even being able to listen to the phone call directly in the platform, being able to look at the initial form fill that was filled out, so that you've got that full funnel view from beginning to end, and you can really pull the levers that are going to move your business forward the best. couple of quick case studies. So this is real data from clients of ours that we have worked with to implement this program. And this is always an interesting one, right? Is Microsoft a good channel to be in? And how much of my budget should be going into that channel? How do I balance it with Google? Obviously, Google is going to have the higher volume out there. And so a lot of times brands are a little bit hesitant on the Microsoft side because sometimes you do see higher cost per leads on that channel. And so we were looking at ways to expand reach and expand opportunity for this client. And by implementing RevConnect, you can see here that if we were making decisions purely on a cost per lead, even a cost per qualified lead, this held true, that Google was a better opportunity and we should have just kept spending more money in that channel as opposed to opening up Microsoft. But when we connected it back to the CRM and through to revenue and started to optimize the campaigns for that, we actually saw almost double, or actually more than double, the actual ROAS on the Microsoft campaigns. And what we saw is those leads were moving down funnel a lot more effectively and actually resulting in bigger jobs. So potentially a different set of consumers out there, not as price sensitive. And so this really helped us drive a lot of value to our client that we were working with. And one other example of how we leverage the platform is not only, on a channel basis, but even down to the actual creative and the text that we're running in different ad campaigns. So this was one where we did a test on 2 different locations within the same brand. And there was a question about, should I be including a financing offer in my ad? Is that going to drive more leads? Is that going to drive more revenue? And so we did a very similar test here. And both of the locations actually showed a lower CPL when running the finance ad. So we were able to generate more leads, probably not an unexpected result there, but 25% lower in one case, 40% lower in the other case. But when we followed those leads all the way through the funnel, the first location actually had a 20% higher ROAS on the non-financing ads. And, what we saw with that, again, were sometimes in that particular market, people were price shopping very heavily. And so the lead came in, even had a conversation, but then they were vetting out 4 or 5 different vendors and didn't end up going with the client as often. This is an example of, you can't just make assumptions at the brand level. Again, it goes back to what Chuck was talking about. We're able, with these tools and with these platforms, to target down to that local level so that we're truly optimizing by location and not just treating every location the same. So some great results there. A couple of existing clients that we continue to see just more and more performance on lowering their cost of marketing.
About how long do you think that it takes if our clients use the system to begin to see results? How long until they can say, okay, now I'm starting to see what's really working and maybe I should start to invest more heavily in this channel?
Sure. It's a great question. And it really does depend somewhat on the volume and the level of investment. So obviously, the more data, the faster it's going to optimize. But, for a traditional franchise system invested in this, you're going to see those gains happen, as early as a month into the process. As soon as you get enough data, it really is the volume of closes that drives this, right? The volume of closes, because then you get the revenue off of it. So as soon as those closes start to come in and you're feeding that data back into the engines, that's when you really see the big gains start to come in. So it can be a 30 to 90-day process, just depending on, some people have a longer sales cycle. So you have to take that into account as well. If your sales cycle is 2 months, it's going to take you a little bit longer to ramp the campaign.
Right. So marketing can now tie in actual revenue based on these different channels. A whole lot different than it was just when you were optimizing for cost per lead and clicks. You actually can optimize for revenue. I think that's the big takeaway here. So very exciting to see how these tools can help our franchise friends. So as we kind of pull things together, I just want to, just take a minute and just, kind of recap. So we talked about discovery and how customers and franchise candidates are increasingly getting answers from AI, and it's not just your website. You've got to really find yourselves in all the different signals, and make sure you're visible in that ecosystem. And then we also talked about social and how that's evolved. It's really a franchise or franchisee relationship where they really need to work together to make sure that everyone's doing their part to send the right signals on that hyper local level. And then, as Stephanie just covered here, it's revenue growth. It's tying marketing to revenue and making sure that the marketing and sales teams are holding each other accountable so that that revenue is tying back to the growth of that franchise organization. So just to kind of summarize, the brands that are going to win over these next few years are not really necessarily the ones spending the most. They're the ones that are connecting visibility, trust, and revenue into one unified growth engine. And so want to make sure that all of our guests here today have an opportunity to have that close look. And so as you can see, a lot of our friends here from our Ignite Visibility team that were, of course, in attendance, and a lot of experts we have around the organization are looking to offer a great visibility report. Really take a good look at your AI overviews, how you're appearing or not appearing, and also taking a look at where you could stack competitively. So want to invite everyone to reach out to us, have a look at your specific website, whether it's a consumer, local website, or a franchise development site. And again, want to thank everyone for your participation today. I want to thank, of course, my esteemed colleagues here, Stephanie, Karen, and Chuck, for some just phenomenal insights to how to navigate this franchise landscape when it comes to AI and how to continue to grow their businesses. So just want to thank everyone for today's participation, and we'll be in touch. Look forward to seeing you guys. Bye.